Afternoon all. In the last lecture, we were looking at forward-backward algorithm. So we were trying to find a efficient algorithm for smoothing. Basically, we want to estimate the probability of hidden variable k for some time step which is less than t. So given evidence from time step 1 to t, we want to find a smooth estimate for the state variable at some time step k, where k lies between 1 and t. So we saw that it is possible to come up with a linear time algorithm. So forward backward algorithm we saw in the last class. So today we will look at the last inference that we will be doing with hidden Markov model, which is finding the most likely sequence. So suppose we uh, observe the following sequence of hidden variable values. Sorry, we observed variable values. So the umbrella is true on the first day, on the second day, and it is false on the third day, and so on. Now the question is, what weather sequence is most likely to explain the observed data? So basically, we have a sequence of evidence variables, the values of the evidence variables, and we want to find out what is the best sequence of the hidden variables that can explain the observed data. So essentially, we are trying to find that sequence x1 to t, which will maximize the probability of x1 to t given the evidence. So evidences are given. So given the evidence, what is the sequence of state variable values that will maximize this probability? So that is our goal. So let us look at a naive approach. So naive approach would be to iterate over all the 2 to the power t possible sequences of state variables. So we have t possible, we have t state variables, and we have 2 to the power t possible values here. So we can iterate over all the possible sequences and find out which one will maximize this probability. So this obviously is not a desirable approach because the time complexity will increase exponentially as the time steps increase. It grows exponentially with t. So what can be a better approach? So another approach might be to find the smooth estimate for all the state variables till time step t. So we have evidence E1 to t, and now based on this evidence, we will find a smooth estimate for all the state variables. So as we saw in the previous class, the smooth estimate will be a better estimate because it is based on more evidences. So now, and we also know that we can do it, we can find the smooth estimate in linear time. So once we have found the smooth estimate for each variable xk, we can simply pick that value which maximizes the probability, the smooth probability. So for the smooth estimate, we will get some probability distribution associated with every variable, and we will simply pick that value which maximizes the probability. And in that manner, we will construct the sequence. So we will for every variable, we will pick the value which maximizes the smooth probability. However, this approach is has a problem. So now the question is why this approach is not a good approach? Can somebody give some answers?
So will the result of one affect the probability of another one? Like when we do one smoothing process, after that the next one. So the next one which we do, the result of the previous one will be affected by that. Is that the case?
Yes, you are going in the right direction. So basically here what we are doing is we are looking at the marginal probabilities. So we are looking at only one variable, and if we pick based on the marginal probability, then we might get a wrong answer. So the marginal probabilities can be misleading. We need to look at the joint probabilities. So the joint probability of the state variables that will maximize this conditional probability. To see this more clearly, let us see this table. Suppose we have just two variables, and these are the and each variable can take either true or false values, and we have the following joint probability distribution. From the table, it is clear that x1 is equal to true and x2 is equal to true has the largest joint probability. So we may want to conclude that x1 equal to true and x2 equal to true is the most likely combination of values that these two variables might take. However, if we look at the marginal probabilities, so if we look at what is the probability that x1 is true, so the probability that x1 is true is 0.4 plus 0.05, which is 0.45, and the probability, marginal probability that x1 is false will be 0.25 plus 0.3, which is 0.55. So if we first find the marginal probabilities and then we pick the value which maximizes each of the marginal probabilities, we will conclude that x1 equal to false and x2 equal to true is the most likely sequence. Which is clearly false if we look at the joint probabilities. So the marginal probabilities can be misleading. So we need to look at the joint probability. The question is, what is the sequence of state variables which will maximize this probability? So we need to look at the joint probabilities. Now the question is how to find this most likely sequence. So we will make one simplification. So as we said, we want to maximize this conditional probability, find a sequence that maximizes this conditional probability. What we will do is we will multiply this value by the probability of observing this evidence. So what is the probability of observing the evidence that we have observed? Actually, this will depend on this will depend on the transition model and the sensor model and what was the prior probability of the state variable x0. Whatever be the case, the probability of observing this evidence that we have observed will be a constant. It is not dependent on the any one sequence of state variables. Basically, this again is a marginal probability, but we are marginalizing over all possible sequences. So essentially, all we are doing is we are multiplying a constant to this conditional probability. Let me say that again. So we want to maximize this conditional probability with respect to the sequence of state variable values. Now, if I multiply this conditional probability with some constant, it is not going to change the sequence that maximizes this product of this conditional probability and some constant C. I'll get the same answer. So instead of this some constant C, all we are doing is we are multiplying with probability of observing the observed sequence of variables, probability of observing the evidence variables 1 to t. So what this allows us is instead of maximizing the conditional probability, it allows us to maximize the joint probability. So now what we can find out is the sequence of variables which will maximize the joint probability of that sequence and the evidence variables that we have observed. If you have any questions, you may ask. So we will look at so we will look at how to do this. So what we will do is we will find out what is the among all the sequences that end with R1 is equal to true, which is the sequence that maximizes the probability of observing E1. And what is the sequence of state variables that end with R1 equal to false that maximizes the observed sequence, which is instead of E1, let me write it U1, because we have seen umbrella is true. So the sequence that we are interested is U1, umbrella is true, umbrella is false, umbrella is not true, U3, and so on. So we will look at all possible sequences that end with R1 is equal to true and produce the evidence that we have observed. All sequences that end with R1 is equal to false that produce again the sequence that we have observed, and we will keep on constructing a sequence based on the best sequence that we found in the previous iteration. Basically, we are using the Markov property. So and we are extending the sequence such that whatever sequence we have will be the best sequence that ends with the last variable being assigned either true or false value. The best sequence that ends with R2 is equal to 2 will be constructed either from the best sequence that ends with R1 is equal to true, or the best sequence that ends with R1 is equal to false. One of these two possibilities will lead to the best sequence that ends with R2. We do not know which one is the case, but we know that these are the two possibilities that will lead to the best sequence that maximizes the joint probability and ends with R2 is equal to true. And we will keep on repeating this procedure. So I will first work out how this works, and then we will see in more detail while this is correct. So first I will describe the procedure, and then I will describe why this procedure is correct. So initially, when we have not observed any evidence variables, we don't have any evidence variable values for time step 0. So that's the prior probability, and we have seen in the previous lecture the prior probability we'll assume is 0.5 in this case. So what is the probability of sequence that ends with R0 equal to true is 0.5, and sequence that ends with R0 equal to false is again 0.5. So that I will fill in here. And next we will ask the question, what is the sequence that ends with R1 is equal to true and has the highest joint probability of observing the evidence variables till time step 1. So what we will do is we will have to consider two possibilities for R1 is equal to true. First possibility is we are building the sequence starting from R0 equal to true, and we are the other possibility is we are extending the sequence starting from R0 equal to false. So for each of these possibilities, we have to construct, or we have to find the joint probability. So let us first assume that R0 is equal to true. So R0 is true. We have the prior probability 0.5. R0 is true, and we are assuming R1 is true. So the transition is from true to true. So with the probability is 0.7. So transition probability will be 0.7 for this. And we are assuming R1 is equal to true. And what is the probability of observing U1, which is our evidence variable? So what is the probability of observing U1 when R1 is equal to true, which is 0.9. So this is one possible sequence that ends with R1 is equal to true. The other possibility is we start from R0 is equal to false and end with R1 equal to true. So R0 equal to false again has a prior probability of 0.5. Now we are making a transition from R0 equal to false to R1 equal to true. So from false to true, we are making the transition. So the probability will be not that one. The probability will be, since we are going from false to true, the probability will be 0.3. And what is the probability of observing the evidence variable when R1 is equal to true? It is again 0.9 only. There is no change in that one. So here you can see that the probability, the sequence that ends with R1 is equal to true and has the highest probability must actually come from R1 equal to, must come from R0 equal to true. So this is what will maximize, this is what will maximize the probability of among all those sequences that end with R1 is equal to true. And this value comes out to be 0.315. So let me just write it. So I will just fill in 315 here. So this is the best probability among all the sequences that end with R1 is equal to true. Similarly, we have to find the best probability of sequences that end with R1 is equal to false. So that we have to consider as a separate case. And one more thing we will note. So we will note down how we obtained this probability 0.315. So we obtained this probability by moving from R0 equal to true to R1 is equal to true. So we will store that information also. So next we have to similarly look at R1 is equal to false. Again, there are two possibilities. The sequences that end with R1 is equal to false and generate the same evidence variable, that is U1 is equal to true, can have two possible previous states. Either U0 is true or U0 is false. So for both those possibilities, we will find the probabilities. Let us first say R1 is true. So prior probability of R1 being, let us first say R0 is true. Prior probability of R0 being true is 0.5. And we are making a state transition from true to false. R0 is true and R1 is false. So from true to false, we are making a transition. That means the probability will be 1 minus 0.7. True to true is 0.7 and true to false will be 1 minus 0.7. So again, it will be 0.3. So 0.5 times 0.3. And now what is the probability of observing the same observed variable? Observed variable is fixed. We will not change that. So what is the probability of observing U1 is equal to true? So now R1 is false. So R1 is false. And what is the probability of observing UT equal to true is 0.2. So we'll multiply this by 0.2. Next, we will consider the other possibility where R0 is equal to false. Prior probability is again 0.5. Now we are moving from R0 equal to false to R1 equal to false. We are moving from false to false. So the probability will be 1 minus 0.3. So 0.7. Now R1 is false. So the probability of seeing the observed variable will be 0.2 because R1 we are assuming is false. So the probability of observing and that umbrella was brought will be 0.2. So here in this case, we can see that the probability that maximizes will be the second one, and the value that we get is 0.07. 0.07. So we will write 0.07 here. That is the probability that is maximum among all sequences that end with R1 equal to false. And we will also note down the transition that led to this probability. So we had to move from false to false, right? The second case was R0 equal to false. So we moved from false to false and that is when we could maximize the probability. And the same step we will repeat for R2. So when we repeat for R2, we will once again assume that R2 is equal to true. And we will look at two cases where R1 is equal to true and R1 is equal to false. So I will note down the thing that we had in the previous slide. R1 is equal to true will be 0.315 and R1 is equal to false will be 0.07. And we will repeat exactly the same thing with R1 is equal to true. And R2 is equal to true. So now basically we are finding what will be the maximum possible probability for all sequences that end with R2 is equal to true. So previous sequence might either end with R1 is equal to true or it might end with R1 is equal to false. And for both these possibilities, we will find the probability and pick the maximum among the two. So in this case, we see that observed variable is U2. I will not write the things because the steps will be exactly the same. The probability that we will get is 0.198, and this will be achieved when we move from true to true. So when we move from R1 is equal to true to R2 is equal to true, that is when the probability will be maximized, and so on. I hope the intuition is clear. I will come back to this if something is not clear. Let me just move to the next slide, which is what is shown in the textbook. So basically, at every time step, we are finding a message which is a vector. So this is similar to the message we were forwarding in the filtering example. We were forwarding a vector which had probabilities associated with true and false values. So similarly, we are passing on a message in every time step, which basically captures the best probability for sequences that end with true and false value till some time step t. And we will also keep storing the state value from which led to the best value. So the previous state value that led to the best state value for R1 was R0 to R1, which we saw. And for R1 is equal to false, it was R0 equal to false to R0 equal to false. For the next time step, it is R1 equal to true to R1 equal to R2 equal to true. That is the sequence that leads to the best value. And for R2 equal to false, this corresponds to R2 equal to false. The sequence actually comes from R1 and not from R1 equal to true and not from R1 equal to false, and so on. And at the end of fifth step, we will get two values corresponding to the hidden variable R5 is equal to hidden variable R5. So basically, these two probabilities tell us what is the best probability among all sequences that end with R5 is equal to true and R5 is equal to false. And now among these two, we simply pick the probability that is largest. So that gives us the probability, the best probability for all possible sequences starting from R1 to R5. Now we simply need to go back. We have stored all the pointers, so we simply need to trace back and find out the values for the remaining variables. So in this example, R5 must be true, R4 must be true again, and then we keep following this arrow. R3 must be false, which makes sense because U3 was false, right? And then if we keep tracing back, this was obtained by from R1 equal to R2 is equal to true. So R2 is equal to true, and so on. So the sequence that will maximize the sequence of observed variables will be R1 is equal to true, R2 is equal to true, R3 is equal to false, R4 is equal to true, and R5 also equal to true. Is the procedure clear? If the procedure is clear, we will see why this is correct. Okay, so let me just move on. So basically, we are passing some message to the next time step. So the message for t+1 time step is basically the two probabilities for x t+1. So message at time step t+1 are two probabilities associated with x t+1. So x t+1 true and x t+1 equals false. These are the two possibilities we find, and we maximize over the remaining variables. So remaining variables is all the variables from time step 1 to t. So over the remaining variables, what is that maximizes the joint probability for each of the two cases for x t+1. So that is the message. That is what we are maximizing. Now the question is, how can we? So this is what we want to find. Now what we will do is we will express this in terms of the message that is passed from time step at time step t. So once we express this in terms of the message that is passed from time step t, and if it is the same message, then that would mean the procedure that we have followed will indeed maximize this joint probability. So again, the manipulations are similar to what we saw in the previous lectures. So our aim will be to somehow bring in the sensor probability and transition probability. So for that, we will just first simply write it as E1 to t and Et+1 separately, the two evidences. And then we will write it as a use the product rule and write it as conditional probability times the joint probability. So we are conditioning upon probability of Et+1 conditioned upon the remaining variables times the joint probability of the remaining variables. The reason for doing this is if the hidden variable at time step t+1 is given, then the evidence at time step t+1 is independent of the previous variable values. So this we have been seeing in the previous lecture. So the first conditional probability will become independent, is independent of the other variables because x t+1 is given. So we can simply get rid of these two values. So in the next step, we have simply got rid of those two values. And if when we remove these two things, the conditional probability that we get does not contain x1 to t anymore. So since it does not contain x1 to t, we can bring it outside the maximization because we are maximizing over sequences of x1 to xt. Now we need to do something here so that we can express this in terms of in terms of transitional probability. So as you can see, we have xt+1 and x1 to t. So maybe if we do something like xt+1 conditioned upon something, then we might be able to do that manipulation. So so what we will do is, again, we will write this joint probability as product of use the product rules. So conditional probability times the joint probability. And once again, we have the Markov property, which says that if the previous state is given, then the next state is independent of other things, other evidences that were seen earlier. So since x1 to t, the previous value or previous state variable is given, the next state will be independent of other variables. So I can simply write this as xt plus 1 given xt. And this last thing is nothing but the message that is passed from time step t to time step t plus 1. So what is this joint probability? This joint probability is what maximizes the probability, because we are trying to maximize from with respect to x1 to t. So this is exactly what the message message at time step t calculates. So here they are maximizing over x1 to xt, but we do not have any x1 to xt here. So we only have xt. So I can simply write it at maximum over xt, two possibilities for xt. And here we have x1 to xt. And this last joint probability is actually the same as this one. Only thing is it is written slightly differently. Here we have written x1 to t and xt plus 1 separately, so we can write it in the same form. So the joint probability of hidden variables x1 to t minus 1, then xt, and the evidence variables e1 to et. So this is what the previous message gives us. So this shows that the maximum joint probability at a time step can be expressed in a recursive manner in terms of the message that is passed in the previous time step and so on. So the procedure that we explained earlier will indeed give us the maximum joint probability at the end. Do you have any questions? So what we have been doing is, for each state, we record the best state that leads to that state. And we, at the end, trace back and find out the sequence of values that will maximize the observed values. And the procedure that we have seen just now is called Viterbi algorithm. So the Viterbi algorithm has time complexity, which is linear in t, because we are simply passing a message along the various time steps. And the space complexity is also order of t, because we need to store the best previous state for every time step. Do you have any questions? Okay, so with this, we complete the 4 inferences that we can take using the hidden Markov model. The section 14.3 in the textbook I will not cover. Interestingly, the section title is Hidden Markov Model. The section title is Hidden Markov Model. But what they do in this section is they express most of the computations that we have done, that is filtering, smoothing, etc., in terms of matrices. And when we do that, there is slight optimization that can be done. So I will not cover that. We will move to the next topic, which is logical intelligence. So we will cover propositional logic, knowledge representation based on propositional logic, and inference. So before I move, let me just check again if you have questions. If you have any questions regarding anything we have discussed till now, you may ask. Okay, so we will continue to the.
So I had a doubt. Like,
yes.
In this case, we saw that umbrella is the only evidence variable. Suppose we have say multiple evidence variables. How do we like? Is the procedure similar or is there something different?
Procedure is similar.
Okay.
The sensor model will assume independence. That is, each evidence variable is generated independently of the other evidence variables. So basically, we will have additional terms here, but we have been assuming that the state can be represented by a single variable. We only have a single state variable. So other things will remain the same.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Okay, so in this module, we will be representing facts in our knowledge base. So we will have some knowledge base where we will be representing some facts about the world or the environment that we know. And then our goal will be to come up with, our goal will be to infer, check whether we can infer something from the knowledge base. So in the first case, what we will do is we will assume that all the facts that we are representing in our knowledge base is expressed in propositional logic. So the example that we will be looking at, the working example, will be that of a Wampus world. I just want to quickly know whether whether the explanation for propositional logic was in terms of Wampus world in logic course that you have done, logic in computer science. So did you study Wampus world there?
No, sir. I think this is new.
No, sir. We had not last year.
Okay, okay, okay. So basically, okay, so I'll just explain what the Wampus world is. We have a 4x4 grid, and where each cell is a room. We can think of it as some room, and we have a logical agent which is in cell 1, 1. So let us say we go in this direction X and this is Y. So the first bottom left cell is 1, 1, and the next one is 2, 1, and so on. So the agent is initially in state 1, 1, and there is gold present in one of the cells. So the goal of the agent is to find the gold and return to the home cell. Home cell is the first cell 1, 1. Now there are some problems. Some cells contain pit. So if the agent goes into a room which contains a pit, the agent will die. Another problem is that there is exactly one room or cell where something called Wampus is present. So this is some monster, and if the agent enters into that cell, again the agent will die. The agent has some clues as to where the pits and the Wampus might be. So the rooms or the cells adjacent to the pit will have breeze. So this is a room, 2, 1 is adjacent to a pit. So we can see that there is a breeze in that room. Also, there is breeze in the room above, and there is breeze in room 4, 1 as well. So the rooms adjacent to the pits will have breeze, and the rooms adjacent to Wampus will have stench. So it seems Wampus emanates some smell, and that can be detected from adjacent rooms. Another important thing is that the agent can perceive only the current cell. So in the current cell, what are the things? So agent can perceive stench and breeze, and there are few other things it can perceive. The point is that agent can perceive only what is present, what it can perceive in the current cell. To perceive the things in the next cell, it has to first move to the next cell. So there are 5 things that the agent can perceive. First one is stench, whether stench is present. If stench is present means one of the adjacent room has the wampus. Whether breeze is present, that is the second thing it can perceive. Third thing is whether glitter is present. If glitter is present means the gold is present in the same cell. So if the agent enters a room that has the gold, then the agent will be able to perceive glitter. So it can then pick the gold. The next thing is bump. So if the agent keeps moving towards the right, it will ultimately hit this wall. So once if the agent hits a wall, it will be able to perceive bump, in which case it has to change its direction and keep moving forward. The thing is, in this example, we also have an orientation for the agent. So initially we will assume that the agent is facing eastwards. So let me say this is east, the right hand side is east, this is east and this is west. The agent is initially facing eastward, and when it moves forward, it reaches the room 2-1. And if it wants to go back to 1-1, it has to turn 90 degrees. So these are the various actions that are available to the agent. It can move forward, it can rotate 90 degree in the clockwise direction or anti-clockwise direction, and again it can move forward. So that is 2 actions. Third action that is available for the agent is shoot. So this agent has 1 arrow available with it, and if the agent is not able to make any progress, every cell has either a breeze or a stench, and it is not able to proceed any further, then it might shoot an arrow so as to kill the wampus. So it will make a guess where the wampus might be, and based on that guess it will shoot an arrow, and if the wampus gets killed, then the agent will be able to hear a scream. So scream is another thing that the agent can perceive. So these are the rules of the world. So let us look at 1 or 2 steps that the agent might take. So let us say that the agent is initially in the home cell, which is 1-1, and in the home cell initially it is not able to perceive any breeze or stench. There is no stench or breeze. So that means the 2 adjacent cells do not have a pit or the wampus. So it marks the 2 adjacent cells as okay. So this is okay now, and this is also okay after perceiving what it perceives in cell 1-1. So now that the adjacent 2 cells are okay, it decides to move to one of the cells. Let us say it moves to 2-1. So it moves to 2-1. Now the agent is here, and the agent is able to experience a breeze. So now here we can see a B here. So agent is able to perceive a breeze. This means either the room above, which is 2-2, has a pit in it. Let me write it. So either this room has a pit, or the room 3-1 has a pit in it, or both might have a pit in them. So whatever be the case, when it perceives breeze, it knows that it cannot mark the 2 adjacent rooms as okay. So now the only possibility to move to is the room 1-2, because earlier it had inferred that room 1-2 must be okay because there is no breeze and no stench. So now what the agent does is it decides to go to room 1-2. Let me write 1-2 so that it's more clear. This is 1-2, this room. For that, the agent must turn 90 degrees, rotate 90 degrees twice, move forward, rotate again 90 degrees once, and then move forward. So these are the sequence of actions the agent has to take. And finally, it is in room 1, 2. Now at this point, it perceives something. Let us see what it is. So now let us say that agent was first at room 1, 1, then it went to room 2, 1, and then it moved back to room 1, 2. So now the agent is here. When the agent is here, the agent can perceive a stench. There is a stench, but there is no breeze. So there is stench and there is no breeze. Immediately the agent can perceive agent can infer a lot of things, or agent should be able to infer a lot of things. First thing it should be able to infer is that this cell is okay. There is no pit here, because if there was a pit here, then there would have been a breeze in 1, 2. So that is first thing it can infer. Second thing it can infer is there must be a pit in 3, 1. Earlier, all that it could infer was there must be a pit in either 3, 1 or 2, 2. But now with some additional information, it knows that there is no pit in 2, 2. And therefore, there must be a pit in 3, 1. I hope I'm making sense. The third thing that the agent can infer is about the VUMPUS. There is a stench in 1, 2, and there was no stench in 2, 1. In 2, 1, there was no stench. That means VUMPUS is not here. So let me write it as not W, and VUMPUS must be here. So VUMPUS must be present in 1, 3, and the VUMPUS is not present in 2, 2. So once it reaches 1, 2 and perceives, it is able to infer a lot of things about positions of pits and VUMPUS. Earlier it was not sure. So now that it has made these inferences, the agent will mark the room 2, 2. So this is a 2, 2 as okay. So now this room is okay, and it will move to the new room 2, 2, and so on. And let us say that finally it reaches room 2, 3, where it is able to perceive glitter. And therefore gold must be present there. So it picks the gold, and now it knows what is a safe path back to the home cell 1, 1. So it traverses back through the safe path and reaches 1, 1. So this is what we want our logical agent to achieve. And we will see how to represent knowledge, represent these various facts in our knowledge base, and how to reason based on it using propositional logic. If you have any questions regarding the VUMPUS world, you may ask. Okay, so we will stop here. Next lecture, we will see how to use various algorithms that you have already seen, but I will not assume that you know it, because there are students who may not have learned various algorithms. So we will continue in the next lecture. If you have any questions, you may ask. Otherwise, we'll stop. Okay, so we'll continue tomorrow. So keep in mind, we have a class tomorrow. We will be following Friday's timetable. So we will meet tomorrow at 3 p.m.